Until daylight after a fourth explosion rocks an Austin neighborhood overnight.
We are working under the belief that this is related to the other bombing incidents that have occurred in our community.
The president set off a firestorm of speculation that Mueller's firing was imminent, naming him for the first time in a tweet Sunday.
Mueller is there to show collusion between Russia and Trump, and there's none so far, so why not end it?
Meanwhile, debate over Attorney General Jeff Sessions' firing of Andrew McCabe played out over the weekend.
Oh, Andy McCabe has undercut his credibility all by himself. It was his own fellow FBI agents that said he leaked and then lied about it.
You know, his firing may be justified. There's no way for us to know at this point.
They got to get the last shot. Paul gets the bounce, and that is it. Nevada pulls off a
Asia, one of my favorite continents, sang this song. The entire continent did. And that's
Asia?
Yeah, they came and went. They had one album out, and then you were just gone.
Normally we put the name up. Did we have it up there?
Yes,
Asia sings this?
Yes, they do.
How many people in that band?
Way too many. It sounds like a whole chorus. and I'm worried about dividing up one album's success. But I hope everybody had a great weekend.
Yes, we did. And also that was the name of the band earlier before it was Asia. Thanks very much for joining us on this very busy Friday. On Friday, we had Pete in for Bright. I hope you had a great St. Patrick's Day.
I did. On Saturday, it was exceptional, as most Irish people did. But without the parade to navigate, it was a totally different feeling.
A little complicated.
Because, yeah, usually we're right in the middle of it.
The city didn't have a parade? What do you mean by that?
Well, I'm on Long Island, and the parade that we usually have to deal with is the
traffic.
one in Manhattan.
Holy cow.
And being that it was a Saturday.
Well, on Friday, Andrew McCabe got fired. We're going to talk about that. But also in Texas, remember those packages that were exploding? Well, we have some Fox News alert right now.
Yep, the city of Austin, Texas, rocked by, get this, a fourth explosion in a month.
Residents warned to stay inside their houses overnight after a bomb exploded in a suburban neighborhood, sending 2 men to the hospital with serious injuries.
Police now say the blast may have been detonated by a tripwire. They are not ruling out a connection to a series of package bombs in the city a couple of weeks ago that has left 2 people dead.
We now need the community to have an extra level of vigilance and pay attention to any suspicious device, whether it be a package, a bag, a backpack, anything that looks out of place, and do not approach it.
Well, there you go. This we haven't seen this way too much. This latest blast coming just hours after police urged the bomber to surrender.
A reward for any information is now up to $115,000.
Right, and what's different about this, and as we just mentioned, it sounds like it was detonated perhaps by a tripwire, is unlike the previous bombings, the package bombs, they weren't left at somebody's house. Apparently they were this was alongside the road, and a couple of guys who were going through, maybe on a bike, tripped the wire, and then it exploded.
So that would be just any wire that runs across the road or something like that would cause it? That's what a tripwire is?
Well, it was obviously, right, essentially a trigger.
Yeah.
And it was nearby the device, which was not in front of a house, but alongside a road.
All right, and meanwhile, that could be anything. It could be a guy felt like somebody was on his tail and just put it to the side of a road. We'll see, or emptying out his vault because he's hitting the streets or hitting the road. Meanwhile, at 4 minutes after the top of the hour, the big news came down from the Office of Responsibility, recommended to the Attorney General that Deputy Director of the FBI, Andrew McCabe, get fired. And after he had 3 hours to defend himself late last week, it was not good enough. He is gone. The report is forthcoming, but McCabe clearly led everyone he was led to believe, or he feels, as though President Trump fired him by the tweets leading up to this.
Well, and media was up in arms over the weekend saying, is Robert Mueller next? And the president's attorney, Ty Cobb, he said this: in response to media speculation and related questions being posed to the administration, the White House yet again confirms that the president is not considering or discussing the firing of special counsel Robert Mueller.
And this is on the heels of the president doing the tweeting. He tweeted about Comey, how he lied under oath. He tweeted a little bit about Mr. McCabe, and supposedly he had memos, but he never saw him take any memos. And then he was talking about how the Mueller team was stacked with Democrats and no Republicans. Meanwhile, the reaction from the mainstream media and a number of Republicans was, How could he do that on a Friday night? Watch this.
It just seemed mean-spirited to come down on a guy within 48 hours of his scheduled retirement. It was clearly rushed, and I think there are questions about that and whether the administration was putting pressure on the Justice Department to take this action.
I think it was a horrible day for democracy. To have firings like this happening at the top from the president and the attorney general does not speak well for what's going on.
I don't like the way it happened. He should have been allowed to finish through the weekend.
You know, his firing may be justified. There's no way for us to know at this point. But even though it may have been justified, it can also be tainted.
Well, keep in mind, this report, it wasn't the president that fired him. The attorney general was recommended to fire him. This is an inspector general report put together by an Obama appointee, remember that found that McCabe did not tell the truth. How much leeway was given to Michael Flynn? How much leeway was given to Papadopoulos, Manafort, or Gates? They lied to the FBI. This guy evidently wasn't candid, and then wasn't candid when he was asked to explain himself. Right. We're about to get we're about to get the details of this. And they were just saying, if everybody else can wear an ankle bracelet, if everybody else's lives can be blown up, why should he leave with a $1.3 million pension?
It sounds as if the Inspector General, Michael Horowitz, had passed along word to the Attorney General and also to this ethics department, which is run by a woman by the name of Candace Wills. She's a career official. She was appointed by Robert Mueller himself back in 2004. She's in charge of the ethics department, and she said that Andrew McCabe essentially lacked candor under oath and also lied. He leaked and lied. Meanwhile, Trey Gowdy was on yesterday with Chris Wallace, and he made it very clear. Look, don't blame the president. Blame McCabe.
Oh, Andy McCabe has undercut his credibility all by himself. He didn't need any help doing that. And I find it richly ironic that he is lamenting that those are attacking the FBI when he himself does the exact same thing. It was the FBI who said he made an unauthorized disclosure and then lied about it. That wasn't President Trump. It wasn't me. It wasn't the crazy House Republicans. It was his own fellow FBI agents that said he leaked and then lied about it. So if he's got credibility issues, he needs to look no further than himself.
And he said he was given permission to leak by who? I guess James Comey, who said, I never leaked anything to the press, nor told anyone else to leak to the press. So something's got to give. The other thing, the president would have been better off just not engaging. McCabe wanted to lash out. He was mad. He was angry. But it wasn't with President. He could say he's angry at President Trump, but President Trump didn't make this call. But when President Trump goes back at him, it allows other people to say this fight is between those two. It obscured the fact that this was fellow FBI agents. These are career appointees who decided that McCabe was acting unethically.
Well, the president just had a busy tweet weekend, but what he mentioned Comey, he mentioned McCabe, he mentioned Mueller's team. He wasn't calling for Mueller to be fired. Ultimately, he was just saying, hey, they haven't found any collusion. Wrap it up. That's
well, he's also said, my attorneys have said not to get involved and not to tweet all this out, but he's saying, I can't basically help it anymore. I need to defend myself and defend my administration. This had nothing to do with me. McCabe's firing was on his own free will. He did something that was wrong, something he wasn't supposed to do. You're not supposed to leak information to the media. He did it. He lied about it and then got caught. So he's saying it's not my fault. Why is everyone blaming me when McCabe did this on his own?
And I'll go back to what Trey Gowdy also said in the same interview, calling out John Dowd for writing the open letter on his own, not representing President Trump, when he said, if your client is innocent, act like it. Don't go ahead and tell Rod Rosenstein to end a probe. Let Mueller follow through. And by the way, the blowback would be severe if President Trump did this. But he feels as though they're going now into his the Trump organization. And he says, why are you doing that? That has nothing to do with Russia. But they're saying the Trump organization's dealing with Russia makes us want to know where this relationship did or didn't go forward.
How many characters when you tweet something out? How many characters? 140? Or they changed it now? This is how long your Facebook post can be if you're Hillary Clinton. It is a page, small text, small font. Her explanation to why she said what she did in India 2 weekends ago.
Oh, yeah. This is
millions of Americans were offended because she was on foreign soil talking about why she didn't win, putting down white women who vote like their husbands, putting down individuals who were Trump supporters and went to the polls to vote for Trump. So she explains why she said what she said. It's not an apology, it's more of an explanation.
Right. On Facebook, she said, I also mentioned something in passing that's gotten a lot of negative attention, that there is anecdotal evidence and some research to suggest that women are unfortunately more swayed by men than the other way around. As much as I hate the possibility and hate saying it, it's not that crazy when you think about our ongoing struggle to reach gender balance even within the same household. So in other words, she doubled down. If you read the whole account, please email us. What do you think about Hillary trying to dig herself out of that hole after she made those comments out in India?
And right, she's getting a lot of Democrats upset, including people like Sherrod Brown, are like, you got to go away. Dick Durbin basically tried to laugh it off, but obviously it's a huge blow to Democrats trying to change the message and turn the page to keep what they think is momentum going, to have Hillary Clinton come back and say women vote because their sons or their husbands tell them to, and that Republicans want to keep blacks and minorities
What
down.
baffled me the most is she said she was defending America, that they were criticizing America and she was defending America.
That's some interesting spin as well. All right, it is 6:11 now on this Monday morning, and Jillian joins us. Good morning to you.
Good Monday morning to you guys, to you at home as well. Let's get you caught up on some of your other news that we're following, starting with this. This morning, students at Florida International University will return to class for the first time since the catastrophic bridge collapse. The school will hold a moment of silence at 1:47 p.m., the exact time of Thursday's incident in Miami. And we know the identities of all 6 people killed in the collapse. That includes a father of 3 and a student at FIU. The first lawsuit on behalf of an injured victim is expected to be filed today. President Trump heading to New Hampshire today for the first time since taking office to unveil his plan to fight the opioid crisis. It includes cutting off the flow of drugs across our borders and in communities, expanding education and awareness, and providing access to treatment and recovery efforts. The feds are also seeking the death penalty for some drug dealers. Former CIA Director Mike Pompeo will meet with outgoing Secretary of State Rex Tillerson today. The pair will meet for 2 hours at the State Department, nearly a week after Pompeo was picked to replace Tillerson. Pompeo also plans to meet with lawmakers today ahead of confirmation hearings. Gina Haspel will head the CIA after Pompeo's move. Let's look at your headlines on this Monday. I'll send it back to you guys.
A busy day.
Yes, it is.
Those are going to be 2 intense hearings. Even by Republicans, going to give them a hard time.
Meanwhile, did James Comey perjure himself during this line of questioning with Senator Grassley last year?
Have you ever authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports about the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation?
No. That's pretty clear. No. Well, law professor Jonathan Turley says new revelations by Andrew McCabe could mean big trouble for the former head of the FBI. Jonathan Turley, next.
Plus,
Director Comey, have you ever been an anonymous source in news reports about matters relating to the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation?
Never.
Question 2 on relatively related. Have you ever authorized someone else at the FBI to be an anonymous source in news reports about the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation?
No.
Okay, there you go. But in his response, to getting fired, Andrew McCabe wrote this: "The OIG investigation has focused on information I chose to share with the reporter through my public affairs officer and a legal counselor. As deputy director, I was one of only a few people who had the authority to do that. It was not a secret. It took place over several days, and others, including the director, that's James Comey, were aware of the interaction with the reporter. That seems to contradict what Comey said to Congress on May 3rd. Here to break it down for us is constitutional law professor at George Washington University, Jonathan Turley. Jonathan, is there a problem here?
Oh, there's definitely a problem. You know, this would seem to contradict what Comey said. Now, we already know that Comey is a leaker. The question is he a serial leaker? Because we know that after he was fired, he removed his memos, which, by the way, I believe were FBI material, at least 7 of them, and gave them to a friend at Columbia Law School, some of which, or at least the information, was leaked to the media. This is an even more serious allegation because it would be occurring when he was director, and it will raise questions of whether Comey is not just a leaker but a liar.
Right, and the thing is, you wonder if his book comes out, if it should be labeled fiction or nonfiction. It'll be a bestseller, we know that. So the president tweeted this out after he saw what was tweeted out by McCabe. He said, wow, watch Comey lie under oath to Senator Grassley when asked, have you ever been an anonymous source or known someone else to be an anonymous source? He said strongly, never know. He lied as shown clearly on the Sunday edition of Fox and Friends as we played it back. So I'm wondering there, so he leaked. Now you have the deputy director saying he leaked. And I'll bring you to another area in which we have to find out about Andrew McCabe. That 3 weeks in which he found about Anthony Weiner's laptop had all those emails on, there was 3 weeks between when he knew about it and when James Comey said he knew about it. So when are we going to get the answer to that? Is Comey lying that he said, I just found out about it, called a press conference and reopened the investigation? Or is Andrew McCabe, for some reason, sat on these for 3 weeks? That also needs some explaining.
Now, it is fascinating to see the gap that is growing between the accounts of Comey and McCabe. There's another aspect to this that doesn't work well for Comey. You know, McCabe said that he kept these memos of his conversation with President Trump. We don't know what those memos say. But there is an interesting contrast. You know, he did not, as far as we know, leak those to the media. Comey did. You know, one of the objections that I made to Comey's conduct at the time was that he could have given those memos to the oversight committees. He could have waited for the investigators to get those memos. They weren't going to be destroyed. And instead he decided to remove them and release them. McCabe didn't. And that creates a sharp contrast between these two individuals of how they dealt with it. It also is going to make it hard to put Comey on the stand as a witness. I mean, he's pretty damaged goods right now unless he can clean up these allegations.
Right. I think that he's totally underestimating the amount of blowback he's going to get from both sides when he goes front and center, all 6 foot 8 inches of him. Jonathan Turley, thanks so much for kicking off our show. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.
All right, straight ahead. California taking their sanctuary status to a new level, appointing an illegal immigrant to a government post. Our next guest's son was killed by an illegal. He says this stunt is a direct shot at President Trump. As president of Russia with nearly 80% of the vote. Video surfacing from several polling locations, check this out, appearing to show election workers stuffing ballot boxes. I can't believe it. Putin will be in power for at least 6 more years. And the Russian leader now calling claims Russia poisoned a former spy and his daughter nonsense in bold letters and quotes. Putin calling it unthinkable, and this country would carry out that kind of attack. ABC News reports that the ex-spy may have been exposed to the military-grade nerve agent through his car's air vents. They were found slumped over on a bench in England 2 weeks ago. Steve Ainsley.
That's quite a story. Meanwhile, state of California taking their sanctuary status to a whole new level.
The state Senate now appointing an illegal immigrant. She's an attorney. Her name's Elizabeth Mateo, to a statewide committee advising college access and financial aid.
Mateo, who is age 33, was brought to this country from Mexico when she was 14 years old. While she is not a salaried employee, California policy entitles her to reimbursement for expenses. So taxpayers will be paying for an illegal immigrant, even though it is against federal law.
So how does this happen? Don Rosenberg, who lost his son Drew at the hands of an illegal immigrant in San Francisco back in 2010, joins us now. Don, how do you feel about this? What are your thoughts?
Well, you know, this is just another one of those outrageous actions by Kevin De Leon in the California Senate. Basically to tell, in this case, I think this was one to tell President Trump and Attorney General Sessions, we're going to do whatever we want to do, and you're not going to do anything about it.
Well, here's the thing, Don. California law says one cannot hold civil office if they're not a citizen at appointment. And Dan Reeves, who's a high-ranking official there, said Senate lawyers advised that her post isn't covered by that law. So she's not covered, but they're going to do it anyway.
Well, that's just, I mean, you know, California, when it comes to anything to do with illegal aliens, the law is irrelevant. I think they've proven that over and over and over again, and they just don't care. They're waiting. Look, certainly Attorney General Javier Becerra is not going to do anything about it because he's willing to break the law as well.
Yeah, well,
so they know they can get away with it.
Interesting you bring that up, because California benefits to illegal immigrants are as follows. Driver's licenses, they're allowed to get those. In-state tuition is covered. Ability to practice law, some welfare benefits they get, and state will pay your legal fees if you get arrested. Tell us what happened to your son.
Well, ironically, my son was in law school in San Francisco back in 2010. He was coming home one night, and Roberto Gallo, an illegal alien from Honduras, was driving in the opposite direction. He made a last-second left-hand turn trying to beat a traffic light. They collided. My son was on a motorcycle, but they were going, both of them were going very slowly. It was rush hour, but instead of stopping, he accelerated, drove over my son's body. My son's helmet had come off and wedged under one of his tires. He backed up, driving over him a second time, and then trying to flee, went forward, and a guy had gotten out of his car, and Gallo stopped, and his rear tire was on my son's abdomen. 5 guys had to lift the car off of him.
It's a terrible story. And you just mentioned, Don, that your son Drew was in law school. Elizabeth Mateo, this woman who has been appointed to this position, wrote this about her law school experience. In law school, I often wondered if I was fit to be in law journal, moot court, because not many people with my same background did. I always went for it because I felt, even if I felt inadequate, I thought I could add something of value. I hope to do the same with @Student Aid Commission, #undocumented unafraid. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I'd actually like to know how she was admitted to the bar, since the oath of office requires you to adhere to the laws of California and the laws of the United States. And although she wouldn't have been charged as a criminal when she was brought here at 14, a few years ago, she was probably in her late 20s, she left the country, went into Mexico, was part of a protest, and came back. Well, as soon as she did that, she's now a criminal. She entered the country illegally, and so she's perjured herself when she took the oath of office, and she should be disbarred.
I wonder if the Supreme Court's going to take up what's going on out in California regarding sanctuary status for an entire state, flaunting the federal law.
Well, it'll eventually get there. The local courts will, try to toss the charges.
Sure.
It'll go to the Ninth Circuit. You can forget that one. So, it'll end up at the Supreme Court at some point in time.
All right.
It is interesting that she is an attorney, yet she has broken the law. Thank you so much, Don, for being with us. I'm sorry for your loss. Just a tragic story.
Thanks, Ainsley.
You're
and
welcome.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, sir.
Take care.
You bet. All right, coming up on this Monday, Andrew McCabe's attorney says President Trump corrupted the process leading to his client's firing on Friday night. But former federal prosecutor Dan Bongino says McCabe has nobody to blame except Mr. McCabe himself. Mr. Bongino, up next.
And forget detention. One elementary school is punishing students with yoga.
That'll do it.
But first, we're wishing Bruce Willis a happy birthday. The actor turned 63 today.
So this is a very tough booking for us, for Dan Bongino in particular, because Dan has to do a live hit for us in his home studio while his family's still sleeping. So, Dan, I'm going to give you the option of whispering during the entire thing. This way your family doesn't wake up during your Fox and Friends hit.
Are you down in Florida? It looks like Hollywood behind you.
No, that's West Palm Beach. But the funny thing is, my wife doesn't even watch the hits on TV because she's in the bedroom next door. So I'll go, "How was the hit?" She goes, "Oh, it was great." She just hears me yelling. She doesn't even need to see it on TV.
Man, oh, man. All right, let's talk a little bit about what's going on in the news. And it was Friday night, about 9 o'clock. It was official. Andrew McCabe was fired. His attorney, who actually used to be the Inspector General for the Department of Justice, Michael Bromwich, he sent this out as a message and a statement. He said, "We will not be responding to each childish, defamatory, disgusting, and false tweet by the president. The whole truth will come out in due course." But the tweets confirm that he has corrupted the entire process, he, the president, that led to Mr. McCabe's termination and has rendered it illegitimate. Talking about some of the tweets the president sent out, talking about how Mr. McCabe says he took memos, but he never saw that happen. So what do you make of this?
Yeah, this is the same guy, by the way, who wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post calling the process, quote, welcome news.
That's right.
Let's talk about a corrupted process, though, for a moment here. Andy McCabe's the #2 in charge of the FBI during the process when they were investigating Hillary Clinton, and they wrote an exoneration letter for Hillary Clinton before they'd even interviewed her, #1. #2, the FISA court process, a secret court, has an information verification procedure known as the Woods procedure. Where was that? You introduced fake information into the FISA court while you were the #2 at the FBI. Let me give you another one out there. You're talking about corrupted processes. He was the #2 in the FBI, Andy McCabe, when Mike Flynn was prosecuted for a statement, by the way, that they claimed to be false, while the FBI director claimed that they thought, the interviewing agents thought Mike Flynn was in fact truthful. Listen, spare us the crocodile tears about a corrupted process, Andy. Sorry.
The Democrats are now offering him a job, 4 or 5, say, come work with me for those next few days, and this way you could get your pension. They don't even know what's in the report. A lot of people figure out that not only did he not help Hillary Clinton, he hurt Donald Trump and he hurt Hillary Clinton. Why do they want to exonerate somebody whose own inspector general had a problem with? This is not Donald Trump's fight.
No, you're right. They better be really careful here. Even Adam Schiff himself, I mean, listen, the king of swamp rat Democrats has even kind of dialed back a bit his support for, you see that with Andy McCabe saying, hey, hold on a second before we kind of rush to judgment here. Andy McCabe, you're right. The IG report has not been released yet. And we don't know how severe some of these leaks were and what kind of information the IG has. And remember, the IG was an Obama appointee, guys. So this, I would be very careful if I were a Democrat jumping to the defense of Andy McCabe.
Well, Democrats are saying, firing him just 2 days before before he would get his pension, saying it's spiteful, act of vengeance, mean-spirited, horrible day for democracy. And these are also never-Trumpers that are chiming in as well. John Brennan, former CIA director, on Saturday tweeted this. He said, when the full extent of your venality, moral turpitude, and political corruption becomes known, you will take your rightful place as a disgraced demagogue in the dustbin of history. You may scapegoat Andy McCabe, but you will not destroy America. America will triumph over you.
You know, if there was ever confirmation to the listeners and the viewers out there of a deep state, the existence of a bunch of embeds at the bureaucratic and political level who will preserve the state over principle no matter what. John Brennan's tweet was that. What a disgusting tweet. This is the former CIA director, by the way, a man, Ainsley, who had access to the most critical intelligence information, one of the most powerful intelligence operatives in the entire world. And instead of, by the way, who's deeply involved in this spying conspiracy on Donald Trump, and Brennan's out there doing what? Worried about his Twitter clout score and his personal profile and snappy retorts on Twitter. I'll tell you what Brennan's worried about. Brennan's worried about how he claimed under oath, by the way, that he had no information about the dossier, yet went up and briefed people on Capitol Hill, and information in the dossier released from Capitol Hill a couple days later.
And by the way, the Russians ran over us for his years in power. Samantha Power came out with a tweet like this, and I don't know what this means. She tried to walk it back in a twisted explanation, but she says, not a good idea to bleed off John Brennan. Really? What's he going to do?
Yeah, I mean, what is he, like a bouncer in a bar or something? I mean, listen, I get it. Like, people say dumb things on Twitter. I sent out a few tweets later on. I was like, maybe I shouldn't have sent that one out. But seriously, it's not a good idea to upset John Brennan. You know what? It's not a good idea to upset Donald Trump. I think we've seen that. This guy's a brawler, and he's willing to fight back. So I think she should really reconsider that tweet, given that she can't unmask people anymore and doesn't have access to the levers of power they abused while her and John Brennan were both there.
Yeah, you just mentioned she was one of the people who had requested unmasking. Didn't she request the unmasking of 200 or 300 people? And that is something that the Department of Justice should be looking into as well?
Yeah, and later on, by the way, she acknowledged that those unmaskings were done in her name, and she didn't even know about some of them. So Samantha
that seems
Power,
correct.
I think Samantha Power, John Brennan, Jim Clapper, Comey, McCabe, guys, listen, a note of advice from a former federal investigator here. Stay off the air Go get a lawyer and pipe down. You're in a lot more trouble than you think you are. Your hubris is overwhelming right now. Their egos are taking over for common sense. Go get some good legal advice. Keep quiet and dial it down a notch. You were only involved in the largest government, conspiracy to spy on a presidential candidate in modern American history. It may be time to dial the volume down just a little bit.
That's what your wife is probably saying in the bedroom next door. It's time to dial down the volume.
Yeah, she's yelling at me right now. You don't hear her? She's knocking on the wall.
I can hear the grate with the broom. Boom,
Wrap it up. Toss to Jillian. Toss to Jillian. Let me get some rest.
All right. Dan, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Have a
Dan.
good week.
You got it.
All right, Jillian has more headlines for us. Hey, Jillian.
That's right. Good morning to you guys, to you at home as well. Terrifying moments captured here when a Cirque du Soleil performer plunges nearly 20 feet to his death as the crowd watches in horror. Emergency workers rushing to French entertainer Jan Arnott. He later died at the hospital in Tampa, Florida. Hours before the tragedy, he posted this picture announcing his act would appear in the show for the first time. An investigation is underway. New York Congressman Tom Suozzi has been seen at several anti-gun rallies this month, but now he seems to be implying that Americans should use guns to oppose President Trump by force. According to the New York Post, the Democrat told constituents at a town hall on Long Island, quote, "This is where the Second Amendment comes in, quite frankly, because you know what if the president was to ignore the courts? What would you do? What would we do?" Suozzi's team denies he was advocating for an armed revolt. One school is allowing students to find their zen in detention. Dahl Elementary in Denver now sending kids to yoga class when they act out. They say the goal is to teach the students emotional and social skills.
Take that moment to breathe and think and be mindful can really help prevent all sorts of problems.
So far, the school calls the program a success. March Madness brackets all over the country, yeah, they're busted. We start with a thrilling finish between 9th seed Nevada and 2 seed Cincinnati.
They got to get the last shot. Hall gets the bounce, and that is it. Nevada pulls off a miracle.
Gotta love the celebration, right? The Wolfpack getting the 75-73 win. Meantime, defending champion North Carolina is eliminated after falling to Texas A&M 86-65. Another 1 seed goes down with Xavier falling to 9th seed Florida State 75-70. And finally, 11th seed Syracuse knocking off 3 seed Michigan State 55-53. That's a look at your headlines.
You're quite comfortable reading those sports. A little bit of a flashback.
I may have done that from time to time in the past.
After one of those buzzer beaters, I think last week, ESPN said that not one person in the millions who are part of their bracket still had a perfect.
Really?
Because number 16
So many upsets?
beat Virginia.
Nobody.